Okay, I'm going to go through the first of what will be a couple of different dreams, which are very, very, very similar in aspects. And so I was considering doing it all as one dream, but I think I'll probably split it into two. We'll see how we go, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to split it into two. Okay, so this first one, 15th of the 9th, 2025. So with this one, I'm just going to quickly set for you the visuals, because it's only a very, very small sequence. But if you imagine me seeing myself, let's say, as an individual in the dream, and I'm looking straight behind me, and in a straight line behind me, I can see my house, not my actual house, but a house that I know and recognize as being mine in the dream. So I have my house behind me, detached house, nothing overly special, and then there's just a sort of like there's a clearing where all I can see really is the house, to be honest. So you've just got this house, and you've got either side of it was either trees or something like that, because all I could see was just this house sat there, and as I said, I'm looking back, and then it's just a relatively short distance, and then there's a hedge line in front of me as well. So I've walked up to this hedge line, and I'm hearing the noise of a very, very mechanical sounding noise. It sounds like a tank, and I do see it. Yeah, I do see it. A tank or a armor personnel carrier, APC, something like that. It's got that very mechanical track-like sounding of heavy machinery sort of noise, as it's sort of squeaking. You know what the kind of sound I mean? Sort of squeaky sort of sound as it's going by. And this tank is basically patrolling this farmland that's directly in front of my house. So it's not a massive amount of farmland, to be honest, but it's just got a hedge that is sort of like above my head height. So quite a big hedge that's going all the way around this rectangular sort of farmland, and it's quite a bare looking hedge. It's not like it's in summer where it's very, very thick and full. It's more like it doesn't really have much what's it called, foliage on it, and so it's sort of somewhat see-through. I'm looking through a gap, and I'm looking through, and I see in front of me is obviously the farmland, which is now mainly the kind of mud part, where it's got it's all kind of muddy, and it's got stubble, so just very, very short length of like a straw, like kind of quite coarse, poking through the ground sort of stubble, where it's been harvested at some point, and now that's all that's left. Okay. And it's very waterlogged, so that sort of area that's just in front of where this gap in their hedges is very, very waterlogged. And it reminds me of certain times of the year, very similar to now, really. I mean, it's March 2026 at the moment. As I said, this one's September 2025. But it's that kind of time of the year where we just get loads and loads of rain, really. It had that kind of feel to it. I would have said that kind of feel to it. Not that I think the time of the year is really all that relevant, but I think the relevance will come through as we go through this anyway. So, because I've just gone off of reading this through, there's certain bits I've probably covered off that's further down here, but as I said, we'll go through. So farmland, hedge around it. I'm basically peering through this hedge, but I couldn't really be seen because of this things going past. And despite there being that hedge there, even though it's quite threadbare, it's not really got all that much to it. Still, this patrolling thing has not seen me. Okay, and I decide that I want to get a better look at this thing, I guess, and I kind of walk up to the edge of where that hedge is, and then sort of peer through just to have a little look. Don't get a very good look, so I sort of jump just across a little bit, so I'm just now inside that farmland, and I'm looking towards this tank-like APC sort of thing that's now gone past. Okay, it's quite unnecessary, really. I put myself at risk at something I clearly think is dangerous, and jumped out, had a little bit of a peek, and then I jumped back in. Yeah, and then we go, and I'll do that several times. Where I dip my head out or jump out into this sort of waterlogged sort of area. It's a bit muddy and everything. Have a little look, and then I jump back into the safety to behind this hedge where it can't really see me. That's kind of the main part. I go into a quick transparency bit before I do carry on, and I talk about other parts of this dream. But that's the main part of where I'm outside, okay, in that bit, and then I'll go inside. Go inside the house. I can't remember which way round it was, whether I saw the inside first and then went outside, or the opposite way round. But it doesn't really matter. But there is a transparency bit I put in here, which is where I watched a film last night. So obviously this is when I had this dream. I watched a dream last night, which was one where it had Americans in it and the Japanese. There was a river that was in between the American base and this Japanese force that were looking to attack the American base, and so this river was acting as a bit of a barrier, basically, between the two. And yeah, the Japanese being the attackers. So it could be something to do with that, because obviously there is this border sort of thing, and there is this army aspect to obviously what's going on, which that film did have. So obviously that can have an impact. So going back to the dream then, so I put here, oh, okay, right, so this did come afterwards then. So I put here, I went back into the house, which was very close by. I put here in a straight line behind this gap in the hedge. Then inside the house, there seemed to be issues with appliances. So I remember, like a kettle for boiling water. So a kettle that had sort of blown up next to the fridge, which I was also concerned could have been damaged. There could have been some damage to the fridge. And there'd been obviously some sort of a small fire or explosion or something like that had caused blackening to the tiles behind this kettle. And this smoke sort of obviously risen, and was relatively high up on the wall, as to all of this black sort of sooty looking stuff that was on the wall. And I was kind of considering, well, what do I do with this? Is this the sort of stuff that I can sort of wipe off, or do I need to maybe replace the tiles, replace all the sort of damaged area, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, smoke damage I put on here. I had considered, just replacing it all, or maybe just leaving it. The boiling water from this kettle had gone everywhere, and so what I was doing is I was cleaning it all up. And there was an extra part where, which I put here, which was odd, which is where I'd planned to leave the property to go somewhere. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so I planned to leave this house, going out, I guess, a different entrance. So maybe the entrance I saw to the house was actually the back door rather than the front door, and I was going to go out the other entrance, because this didn't apply initially when I was going into the house or anything like that. So it was only when I was leaving that this came up. But when I looked at the house, to be honest, I'm pretty sure I saw the front of the house, and this front door just came out onto this farmland. But again, not sure. But I was just very keen to keep myself dry, which may relate to, I guess, this waterlogged field in some way. I don't know, but yeah, this extra part where I'd planned to leave the property to go somewhere, but I wanted to keep myself dry. As I walked out the front door, there we go, front door, there was a shower head that was hanging over, and so as I walked out, hoping to stay dry, my head got soaking wet from this shower head coming on and spraying water over me. And I put in something here like I'd previously been trying to keep my hair dry, which is really odd. So I don't really know what that aspect is necessarily. So a bit of an odd one. It can be quite cryptic with dreams, can't it? But I mean, how random is that? Walk out your house, there's a shower head hanging over the top of the front door, that's triggered as soon as I open the door, and then the shower comes on. Very bizarre. Anyway, so what were my thoughts? So I put here, could be nothing at all. Could be connected to the film I'd watched. But if not, this is my closest interpretation. This is my closest interpretation. Now, I think it could be this. I do actually think it could be this. And I do also think it could be what I've written here at the same time. So this will take us in two different directions. So the house could represent me. Okay, so obviously the house does well, I mentioned this scripture yesterday, actually, in a video where that was 2 Corinthians something. I'll find it. I'll find that one. So 2 Corinthians, I remember that being, but that's a scripture that talks about us having our earthly abode, let's say, which is the tent. So it's very temporary. So this body we have is very temporary. You know, what do we have it for? So around about 100 years, generally max. A lot of us a lot less than that. But that in heaven there is a far more permanent structure. So rather than a tent, which is a very temporary dwelling, we have something more permanent. Again, I'll go through that scripture, but what I'm essentially saying here is the house represents a person. Yeah, very, very frequently, actually. So the house could represent me. So because it goes into me, let's say. So if this is the house, it's showing me the inside of the house. It's like it's almost taking me into me. And what it could represent is that I have poorly maintained inward parts. Okay, inward parts, because I'm seeing stuff inside. Inward parts, what I mean by that, and there you go. I'll explain that. So inward parts, or appliances in this case. Yeah. So inward parts being the travel of change, let's say, towards a heart that to be reborn. So in that process of which I've said many times, in sinners' prayers and stuff like that, you've got to believe in your heart. But there's specifically ones to do with inward parts that it talks about. So, and there is a book actually that specifically talks about that I've mentioned before, which I think is called Blood Alliance. Blood Alliance by Zev Porat, Zev, then Porat, Porat, I believe, which talks about this whole process of the faith being a transition between moving through your inward parts, let's say, until getting to your heart. And then that's where your heart is changed. And that's kind of like the salvation process, let's say, that believing in your heart. But it starts to a certain extent, kind of, if you imagine it in like that body analogy, that it kind of starts by working that faith working its way through you until it finds its destination, which is in your heart. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. But again, that book does go through a lot of detail about that. And it does link into other bits and pieces that I mention here or possibly in the other dream. So we'll see. So it could mean that. So that exploration of the house could be like me seeing the condition of my inward parts, let's say. The hedge. So a hedge is something that's certainly could talk about spiritual protection. So the hedge could be there for spiritual protection, but it did have holes in it, didn't it? Because obviously I was walking through to get out to the farmland, and that this was being patrolled by an enemy looking for a way in, maybe. So a hole in that protection, a hole in that hedge of protection. And it could be, the typical sort of one that we hear of, like the prowling lion, which is represents Satan, that is, it says looking for someone who he can devour. It's basically this idea of our enemy, Satan and his demons, all that kind of stuff. They're looking for a way in all the time. And that's what it kind of felt like from that point of view. So potentially that patrolling tank sort of like thing could represent the prowling lion. Or it could be, again, some other books that I've read by an author called Blake Healy. So Healy, first name Blake. And he's actually a seer who I've mentioned, I think mainly in season 1. I did mention Blake a couple of times, but he's a seer, so he sees in the spirit, in that he can see demons, he can see angels, just like you could see me. We could, like we could see each other. That kind of scenario. He sees them all the time. He can kind of phase in and out as he wants to, as to what he sees and what he doesn't see. But he does actually talk about that, actually, where he sees he sees demons quite often, quite small, some of them, where they're trying to get their way in and they're looking for a way in into your body. And he describes ones like having like a foot that's kind of like stuck in someone's shoulder, I think it is. He talks about it, and it can be things like causing pain, but yeah, all sorts of things he describes. But I remember him specifically talking about, in one of his books, I've got about 3 or 4. Actually, that's interesting. Just thought, one of his books I pre-ordered, which is going to be arriving this month, his next one. But yeah, he talks about this. I remember him talking about an example where there was kind of like a sort of like a shield of protection, let's say like a bubble, I think is how he described it, around a person. And this demon was kind of like crawling around this bubble, trying to find a way in to get to this guy, and actually found that there was a hole towards the top, and it was to do with his sin. So his sin was actually creating an entry point for to be oppressed, and it found a way in and somehow got inside this, let's say, this shield. Okay, so that's like this kind of. Oh, sorry, I've just done that. It's probably muffled the mic a little bit there, but yeah. So that again can be like that hedge of protection, another way of describing it, I suppose. But that's how he sort of saw it. Yeah, and so that it could be to do with that. Okay, so that was the end of that part of my description. So what I thought, my initial thoughts, and in writing it down initially, what I thought that was talking about, a hedge of protection, and that there was holes in that hedge of protection. The other bits I would now mention, because I've literally filmed a video yesterday that was talking about, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday now? It might be the day before yesterday, but it was talking about one where there was a home renovation that I was doing with my family, and there was this aspect where I was painting everything all white, but there was this patch that my daughter in the dream painted jet black, and I saw that as kind of like sin coming into, and that was like that was like a depiction of the body, and us being the white being righteousness, and that we had been what's it called? The place was clean, swept clean, again representing us, white to represent righteousness, but there was this darkness coming in. Okay, I was very keen, obviously, to get rid of the darkness in that dream, and wanting to get back to it, back to painting it white again. So a very similar concept here, very, very similar concept, I think, here with the appliances, the faulty appliances that cause this blackness, doesn't it? Like I mentioned, this black smoke that goes up against the wall. So very similar to that black paint in that white, with all the white walls and so on. So again, I think that's very, very similar. So it's potentially talking about the inward work, let's say, of the Holy Spirit when we went into the house there, and yeah, and then maybe the hedge is that hedge of protection that goes around us, and that there was a hole in that hedge, which could provide access for the enemy. Hopefully that whole concept there, that whole construct I'm trying to put together, is kind of making sense to you. Okay, I would highly recommend those Blake Healy books. They're absolutely fascinating to see what he, to understand what he sees in the spirit. He talks about obviously the negative, talks about demons of its species, but he talks about the angelic, with incredible stuff. It's so visual the way he describes it. So good at you can visually see it all. It's very, very good. So I'll probably cite some of those books maybe for you. I'll mention that other book. So the the Blood Alliance one as well. I'll mention that as well. I'll put it in the description. Always look in my description because you find lots of information around stuff I've talked about in the video, the scriptures, ones that I've actually read out, ones that I've actually just hinted at, and also books and other videos. So I probably would link in there the new one, which is about the Holy Spirit, the white walls, that one, because I think that links in very nicely there, and very, very recently covered off. Right, okay, so I'm going to go through another one. So this was my thoughts as I'm literally filming. I'm about to film, not as in right now, sorry, not as in right now. I'm about to film, and I'm starting to look through, you know, some of the dreams, and I'm starting to bring up a plan. So this is about 3 weeks ago, and I'm starting to think, right, what am I going to do as my first videos? And this one was really on my mind, and I felt like, yeah, I really want to do this one. I mean, we're now, how many dreams am I in? 30 dreams in, I think, something like that. And it's taken me that long to get to this one because I've been putting this one off, actually, not quite knowing when to do it. But now, given I've just done that one to do with the white walls and all that kind of stuff, actually works out better now because I've covered that off, so you can kind of link that one in. Back to this then. So, alternative thoughts. Well, they're actually a continuation, really. I mean, I did mention obviously a hedge of protection, didn't I? I was just talking about that. But I'm going to go through a scripture here that talks about it, and we've got Job. So very, very rare for me to go through Job. Although I was in a shop yesterday with my daughter that she loves to go in. It's got loads of cuddly toys and stuff like that she likes to buy, and there was lots of models of dinosaurs in there, and it did make me think of Job because Job talks about what a lot of people think is to do with dinosaurs. And it's because he talks about some animals. He talks about one that's got like legs like trees or something like that. I'll find that one. It's an interesting one, but it's where a lot of people think that what Job is actually describing is dinosaurs. And so yeah, I'll find those passages. Actually, I think that's just an interesting thing to look into, because then you can obviously, if you want to, Google it, you know, find out what the general consensus is on what does that mean. But the way he describes it very much makes me think of a brontosaurus, very much so. But you know, and it talks about massive sea creatures and things like that as well. But anyway, look into that. But this one, Job 1, which is verses 8 to 11. So I'm just going to read this, actually. Yeah, I'll just read this. So then the Lord said to Satan. Okay, so if you imagine that as an interaction between the two of them. So this is the Lord. The Lord said to Satan, Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied. Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. Okay, so there's a couple of elements of that which I thought was interesting, because it did very much link into what we saw there. So the hedge of protection, yeah, so we've got the hedge of protection, and covering around the household. So as I mentioned, I think I did mention, there was something that was sort of around the house to a certain extent, because I couldn't see anything either side of the house. When I was looking back through something. I can't recall exactly what I was looking back through, but I can visualize a lot of this right now. It was a kind of quite a dark looking house, actually, quite sort of blackish, sort of looking in, yeah, how it sort of looked. But yeah, it certainly had something around both the left and the right hand side, and then this hedge line. So it almost felt like, because it felt very like tunnel vision, if you imagine it like that, in that I can see this house and a little bit of a gap either side, but it's very tunnel vision. So in that there was definitely stuff outside of it. So it does make me think of this hedge maybe also extending around the house as well. So when I read that, He's got a hedge around him and also his household. And then it also talks, of course, not only of that, but it talks about the what's it say about pasture lands? Does it? Oh yeah, that you've blessed the work of his hands with his flocks and his herds and stuff like that. So again, it makes me think of obviously pasture land, that kind of stuff as well. And then what it's basically saying is, Job only sort of prays to you and worships you because of look at what you've given him. If you take that all away, well then he's going to he's going to curse you to his face, to your face, that kind of thing. He's going to curse God and stuff like that. Definitely read that one, by the way, Job. It's a really fascinating sort of book talking about how the immense amount of stuff that happens to Job because of God lifts that protection off of him, so that he can be tested. Like we all get tested in different ways. I believe I've been tested way lesser degree than Job for sure. But what I mean is we all have different tests, I think, that we do go through to build our character and to strengthen our faith and stuff like that. But anyway, that's where I'll leave that one. As I said, explore that. I mean, it's a really interesting scripture. And as I said, I'll see if I can find the dinosaur aspect for you, just for your own curiosity, really. So, and I mentioned here, so is it like I'm sort of stepping outside of God's protection, this hedge of protection in this dream, and the house was also in view. So maybe that there's protection around the house as well. I then looked into. I basically Googled scriptures that actually include farmland and things like stubble, because obviously that was very much a factor. This farmland with this hedge around it. And there's quite a few. I'm going to list quite a few different scriptures here of what came up. I'm not going to read through all of them, actually. I might read through one. I'm going to see whether I want to do that, to be honest. But I'm going to read through some of these scriptures for you to actually pick up and just look through them yourself. So you've got Malachi 4, verses 1. You've got Isaiah 5, verses 24. You've got Isaiah 47, verses 14. You've got Obadiah 1, verses 18, and you've got Psalm 83, verses 13. I'm just going to mention the Psalm 83 one because I felt like that was quite a good one. So it says, so that particular one, it says, let us take possession of the pasture lands of God, which feels very similar. You've got this patrolling tank or whatever, so it's like it's taken possession, isn't it? Because I can't really safely go out there, because of its patrolling around it. So I felt like it sort of felt like that in a way as well. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to go through Psalm 83. Now, Psalm 83, you would have heard me mention Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38, as potential future wars. This is something that's pretty common, I would have said, that people think that these are future wars, but they could well have happened to a certain extent already. And I was watching a video about it yesterday, as it goes. There wasn't talking about Psalm 83, to be fair. It was talking about Ezekiel, and how a lot of it is all very more stuff that's actually happened, and a bit more symbolic and stuff like that. But I'm just going to read. So I'm going to read Psalm 83. Okay, I'm going to read this one and somewhat explain it. Okay. I was very much in two minds as to whether to do this or not. So I'm going to do it anyway. So Psalm 83 reads, and the psalm, this is a psalm of Asaph. Okay, so not David. There are a lot of the psalms are from David. Again, this is all around about 1044 sort of BC. Was the time frame when I looked up the potential time frame as when these were written was around that sort of time. So, but this is a psalm of Asaph. Okay, so, but it is all very connected around this time. So, O God, do not remain silent. Do not turn a deaf ear. Do not stand aloof. O God, see how your enemies growl, how your foes rear their heads. With cunning they conspire against your people. They plot against those you cherish. Come, let's say, let us destroy them as a nation, so that Israel's name is remembered no more. With one mind they plot together, they form an alliance against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarites, Biblos, Ammon and Amalek, Philistia and the people of Tyre, even Assyria has joined them to reinforce Lot's descendants. Do to them as you did to Midian, as you did to Sisera and Jabin at the river Kishon, who perished at Endor and became like dung on the ground. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us take possession of the pasture lands of God. Make them like tumbleweed, my God, like chaff before the wind. As fire consumes the forest, or a flame sets the mountain ablaze, so pursue them with your tempest and terrify them with your storm. Cover their faces with shame, Lord, so that they will seek your name. May they ever be ashamed and dismayed. May they perish in disgrace. Let them know that you, whose name is the Lord, that you alone are the Most High over all the earth. Sorry if you see a little bit of a glitch there after I finished. That's just purely because I paused it for a second. Just get a quick drink. I've turned the radiators on because it was freezing downstairs and it's starting to dry the air out quite a bit. Okay, and you would have heard the irritating washing machine stop and start bleeping. So I wanted to get rid of that as well. As I mentioned in other videos, I hate the fact that it interrupts that, but I've got to use the time to get stuff like that done, unfortunately. So what is it talking about in Psalm 83? Well, it's actually talking about or a load of nations that are around Israel that all come against them. So you've got them all to the south, to the side, and up and above, all around. I mean, in the Bible I've got here, it does talk about this as representing potentially the Assyrian Empire, because it does actually mention. There you go. Even Assyria has joined them to reinforce Lot's descendants. So it's talking about. As I said, a lot of the areas around, but this gives you an idea of sort of potential time frame, and that this is maybe in reference to the Assyrian expansion, which is around about 750 BC, that sort of time frame, and that it was quite typical, apparently, of what the Egyptians did is they would name a lot of the nations around them when they're discussing like immediate enemies and things like that. So again, I read all of this through, and it was just so much reading, and I just thought it's not really even a huge amount. It's telling you about where these places are, but as I said, ultimately they're all around Israel. It's all the surrounding nations of, I don't think you've specifically got Egypt in there, but you've got like all of Jordan and all the nations going all the way up and around, and Syria and all of that kind of area, I think, is what it's sort of talking about. It's talking about Philistia as well, which is actually on the coast of Israel and Tyre. So they're just like a little bit of the coast that Israel didn't have possession of at the time. So they are kind of technically somewhat surrounded there, but a lot of people do believe that is talking about a future war, and it does somewhat sort of talk about that to an extent in this study Bible, in that it talks about this doesn't really match with something that we're aware of in history. So it's, again, which is what is sort of saying this could be a future war that's not yet happened, which again, a lot of people think Ezekiel 38 is also about that as well. This surrounding element is interesting because it also makes me think of another video, which is called Gathering Storm. And that this won't really spoil it, I don't think, but there's this massive storm. So it's a rotating tornado that's absolutely massive, and I very much see it as a war coming. And I talk about the rotation there, that you've got a rotation around this point, which I think points to Ezekiel 38. But you know, who knows? With dream interpretation, it's you can't always get it spot on. But I'm always just trying the best I can, really, to identify things that I feel like are the themes of the dream. So yeah, it's basically all these different nations coming against Israel. Okay, and it specifically talks about in this one. Where are we? Yeah, so verses 4, it says, "Come." They say, "Let us destroy them as a nation, so that Israel's name is remembered no more." So this is a proper, let's destroy Israel, absolutely destroy Israel, which we really feel like we're in that kind of position at the moment. Obviously, there's wars going on at the moment a lot, given we're in March 2026, stacks of wars all over the place, all around Israel at the moment. And I do wonder whether that's going to translate into a major war that comes against them in the future, which I think is quite likely. I think it is quite likely. But this more sort of also sets up the next dream. Okay, so I think that is where I will leave that one. I'll put in all the different scriptures, all the different videos I've mentioned, and all the books and bits and pieces. So there'll be a big description listed, and we'll go into the next one. So see this sort of like a part 1, and then we've got a part 2. I would sort of say just because of similarities, Okay, and one other one actually, I would say that one other one that it matches in a way is one called, I think it's called Angels Among Us. Now, that one is a season 2, so the microphone will be at a decent level. That's one thing I would mention as well, is season 1 was recorded at a lower level, just purely because I didn't have a microphone to increase the volume or have control over the volume recording level. So season 1 is quite a bit quieter. So you just need to turn it up a bit, but there's no adverts with any of my videos, so you don't normally get caught out by this blasting video. Only when the video ends, it should then go into an advert. So as long as you're paying attention, you should be fine. Yeah, that's where I'll leave this one, and then we'll go on to the next one. And you'll see, I imagine, some similarities there. Okay.